Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Thought Rock Problem Management VIG inaugural session. My name is John Townsley, and I'm the CEO of Wyze, the owners, purveyors, managers of the Thought Rock environment. Today, we're getting together with a number of industry experts to talk about problem management in particular. And as I said, this is the inaugural virtual interest group, so there may be some interest coming out of this session and continuing these meetings with the same and or expanding group of people. And we're happy to facilitate that through Thought Rock and make that happen. So I assume that everyone can see my screen. I'm going to step through a quick presentation and then we're going to get right on to the virtual interest group session and hopefully drive the value that you're looking for out of this session. All I got to do is figure out how to make these slides. Maybe give me 1 second. There we are. So the objective here would be to have a virtual interest group running probably every quarter. We look to get IT colleagues from around the world. Today we have people from the Toronto area and Dwayne from Minnesota and a bunch of people from across North America who are participating in listen-only mode. We are looking to share information, gather from experiences, talk about the best practices and how those are actually implemented in real-life kind of situations. It's kind of vendor-neutral, unbiased discussion, so we're not looking to sell anything to anybody or promote any particular software, but feel free to talk about those things and discuss them. For those of you who are participating but on mute, if you have input or questions, you'll see on the right-hand side in the GoToMeeting control panel there is a chat function. Feel free to type in chats, and I'll keep my eye on that chat box and answer questions and pose questions to the panelists so they can address them. And we are looking to make this a fairly interactive session and add as much value as we can for you. So don't be shy about doing that. I will keep my eye on the clock. The session is broken into a roughly 2 half-hour segments. The first will be kind of an overview of everybody and what they're currently doing, and then we'll talk specifically about challenges with respect to problem management and the problem management process, and then we're going to brainstorm through the solutions and the experiences people have in solving those challenges. So, as I said, don't hesitate to pop into a chat, and if there's a challenge that you're facing that doesn't come up in the discussion, let's get it up. And I will be logging that on a document, which you'll be able to see shortly, so you'll be able to follow along and see how the discussion is flowing. As I said, my name's John Townsley. There's a bit about me. In a nutshell, that says I went to business school, graduated in the last Great Recession, couldn't find a job doing the things I wanted to do, but had some IT background because I paid my way through school as a computer operator. And Nabisco Brands was gracious enough to hire me in their IT department. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years and then went to the dark side and joined the vendor world because it appeared to me that people who were selling me stuff were making more money than I was buying it. So since then I've kind of become a serial entrepreneur and now I'm chronically unemployable. But as one of the founders of Wyze and the principal shareholder, I love every minute of it. Well, almost every minute. So that's me. We have our panelists today who are gracious enough to volunteer their time to turn on their microphones and allow me to probe them with questions, and you as well. So Tina Mastrioni is the problem process manager at the Bank of Montreal here in Toronto. Thomas Lee is the incident problem and service level management process owner. So owners and managers for you idle types, you'll be familiar with those roles. Dwayne Cracker is in IT infrastructure operations manager with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Graham Furness is a senior consultant here at Wyze Solutions, and he's engaged in both training and consulting with our customers and has various IT history and background. So I'll let everyone do a little more formal introduction of themselves, although we won't take too much time to do that, so we can get right to the meat of today's discussion. Why don't I do that? Tina, do you want to, or actually Thomas, why don't you lead off? And maybe you can introduce yourself, 30 seconds on your background history, and then talk a little bit about problem management at the Bank of
Okay, yeah. My name is Townsley. I've been about 20, 25 years in the IT industry, and we started on our ITIL journey about 2002 at the Bank of Montreal. And in 2004, the whole IT organization within the Bank of Montreal went to using the ITIL processes, and we implemented ITIL's processes of incident, problem, and change. And since that time, I've been the process owner for this group, and then adding on different areas. Yeah, and it's been in a good journey. It's been a long journey and lots of learnings, and working on V3. And the Bank of Montreal is a company with about 35,000 employees, of which about 2,500 or 2,000 are IT. And we're really getting to see some good value there with our incident problem processes.
Thanks, Thomas. Tina, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. I'm Tina Mastroianni. I am the problem process manager for Bank of Montreal. So basically my role is to, I guess, sort of follow the day-to-day processes and continuous improvement activities. And I guess I'm the go-to person, like, prior to Thomas, let's say, when there are issues with process. But along with it, a lot of the other, there's so many other areas of being a problem process manager that come along with the job. But I've been in problem management since the beginning of the implementation of the ITIL processes. So I've kind of come from the grassroots part of it. I was in the, I've been in the process since the beginning of the implementation of the ITIL processes in the bank. That's it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tina. Dwayne, over to you.
Yes, my name is Dwayne Craker, and I'm the manager of the IT infrastructure for operations. And problem management is my process that I'm the owner of. And it's kind of been a role that's matured into, well, before it was even ITIL, it was around here was called outage management. So this is probably 8 years ago. And where it came into operations is I had the command center, the 24-hour staff, the NOC, whichever term you are comfortable with. My job is to create stability, look for places where it's not stable or unhealthy, and to correct that. And like I said before, we called it outage way back when, before we were educated. And so I had first view of any kind of situation from an enterprise level, from a monitoring point of view of when something was down. So my job was to monitor for stability, and eventually that turned into what we call a major incident process. And so I manage all incidents that are major, so anything that's an outage across the enterprise versus the incident process, which is just individual people or not enterprise level. And then after having major incident for a few years, the next path was to find root cause and correct things or fix things permanently and not just restore the service. So problem management, the term or the process, has only been around for about 18 months, but we've actually been doing it for quite a few years. And so that's how, from an operations point of view, problem management came into my area. It's basically stability and making it so that we remain stable. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dwayne. I think there's someone presented a question for BMO, but Janie, maybe you can help me, and I'm not seeing it. So we'll keep going, and you can pass it over to me, and we'll pose that question. Graham, do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about your background?
Yep, great. Thanks, John. Yep, I'm a senior consultant here at Wyze in the field of ITIL and service management, and do both the training and the consulting. So have a nice broad view and vision of the entire framework. Done work across a number of different areas through incident problem, into service level management, change and configuration. So all of those are great. They're all complementary to what we're doing today in problem management. And in the background, I've had experience across a whole range of fields. You know, I'm a journeyman from a business degree background, understanding helps me a lot today. Understanding the business drivers, especially in trying to fund and justify different pieces of the ITIL and process management frameworks. And then development background in application development, database development, support work in the same field, and early days on support desk and support centers, into project management, and now into process management. So I'm looking forward to this, the discussions we're going to have today, and throwing out some ideas and challenges and experience for everyone.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Here's the question that was posed, and maybe, Thomas, it's best if I direct it to you. The question coming from Jean was, do you have a continuous improvement manager, or is that rolled into project management? And I'll add my own editorial, or does it sit somewhere else?
Yeah, we've tried it in several areas actually, and they all worked very well. We actually have a program, a continuous improvement program, which we had a permanent project manager, senior project manager running that, and basically they run it exactly like a program. It's a program manager. Recently, what we've done is one of our senior, I guess, technical people, who's basically a visionary in this area, has basically taken over that role, and has basically gone through continuous improvement. Like, for example, we've implemented all the main processes, and you know, he took us through a journey to review whether we wanted to go to V3. The decision of which was that we were already close enough to it that we didn't have to make it a project, and now we're working on things like BSM to bring the organization into a more service-oriented frame of mind in terms of how we phrase things and do things. So yeah, so we basically do have a continuous improvement there, and we're looking now at implementing a continuous service improvement plan, but based on the instance and problems. So sort of an offshoot from availability and service level management. So there are two flavors of continuous service improvement. There's the process part of it, and there's the actual service itself to improve.
Excellent, thanks. I think that answered the question, but if anybody has follow-on questions, just go ahead and type them in as questions or chat with me, and I will pose those. So as I mentioned, we have people from all over the place. Here's a list of some samples of companies that are participating today, just so you get a sense of the audience that we have. And we talked or sent out a quick questionnaire survey about what is it that people wanted to learn. So obviously best practices for problem management, share successful strategies with other organizations, advancing the problem management process maturity, so how do we make this better and move it up the maturity scale, lessons learned, processes with smaller organizations that don't have separate PM departments. I'm sure that'll be an interesting topic. And basically, yeah, what works at other companies and how did you do this? So we will try to address most of those points actually as we get through the next hour or so. Anything we don't get to or anything you want to drill down specifically, you can always drop us a line or get a hold of Jamie at ThoughtRock, and we can schedule follow-on sessions and so on. Enough of all of that. Let's get started. I'll show you the format that we're going to use here. I will change my screen, and you should see another document come up on the right-hand side of your screen. Just make sure that you're seeing that. Yep, there we go. So what we're going to do is get the panelists to brainstorm through, based on their history and experiences, the challenge that they first of all had in terms of getting to where they are today, and then secondly, we'll get them to talk about the challenges that they still face and are going to face going forward. And then we'll come back in the second half of this discussion and brainstorm through solutions. So that's how the format that we'll use. We find it's quite effective. Get everything on the table that drives us crazy or we can't figure out how to make happen, and then the sharing part comes through in solutions. So almost always there will be somebody come up with an idea, and at least 3 or 4 people will say, I wish I'd thought of that earlier, thank you. So let's see, why don't we start, we'll go backwards this time. Dwayne, do you want to maybe kick off as you move from the previous process you described in the naming conventions that it has 18 months ago? What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Probably the biggest one was because problem management requires so many resources going in and out of each virtual meeting or real meeting. I needed the SMEs. I needed access to those SMEs, and I need them either immediately for a major incident, or I need to have them ongoing for a series of meetings. And to get their time away from either development or production had to be proven, and both at the individual level and obviously at their management level. And so I had to prove my worth. I had to prove that it was worthwhile for everybody across the enterprise to invest resource time into my process. Make sense?
Actually, I'll just pipe in on that. That's Graham here. I've noticed that a lot in different companies that I've worked with. The biggest challenge is getting resources from other people.
So, sorry, at the bank, I don't know how we want to go with this, but at the bank, one of the initial problems was actually getting full buy-in from everybody, because not so much that because they're saying, well, why should I go to someone else, right? Why do I even need a second person? It's more work for me if I have to, I solve the incident, and then I have to send all the details back to the person who's doing problem management. And then what does that problem management do? They come back to me again to ask for more details to research what the final solution is or what the fix is. So, there was an issue with like how, why should I even do that? Why don't I just not talk to this other person? I'll just do it myself, right? So there's that culture change to talk about how we can do that, right? And try to show them the more, the carrot rather than the stick to do this type of stuff and how it benefits things. So that was one of the initial issues that people had with problem management when it came in there. So I don't know, Tina, do you have anything you want to add?
Again, I believe it's the introduction to the initial culture change. You have to change your thought process around outages with the company and separate the incident from a problem. And I think that it's basically the initial communication of the new process that was going to be introduced. I think there had to be a lot of communication out there so that people keep hearing the terms, because it's something new. It's something that that all the IT people, it was new to them. Like, they understood outage minutes. They understood we have to restore service. And I believe restoring service for an incident and looking at root cause and fixing it were all kind of part and parcel of one process, whereas introducing the ITIL process, now you have to separate all these activities that you're doing and make sure you have proper documentation.
This is Dwayne Lacrosse, and I believe Tina brings up a very good point. I'm so close to it that I forgot about that. The education process of the difference between incident management and problem management and what the objective is very important.
Because I believe in an IT world, you're worried about restoring service. It's all one piece. It's all one big process from beginning to end. But with ITIL, it's all separated. It's all different. It could be the same people doing the work, or it could be separate people doing the work. So now suddenly an organization has to communicate between the incident process, the problem process, the change process. So I think it was basically the culture, education change, and information and communication.
Even more than that, there's actually occasionally a conflict of interest of being successful at both of them.
Can you expand on that a little bit, Dwayne? I'm not sure how to capture that point.
From an incident process point of view, if something is down and you want to restore service, as fast as possible, getting it restored may not, you don't want to invest the time to gather logs or do some analysis and look at it in the down state to be able to do root cause analysis at that time. So that doesn't happen very often, but occasionally there's a conflict of interest there.
So there's a resistance to root cause analysis during a, well, I guess Idle would describe it.
Everybody likes to fight a fire right away and just bring it back, where there's investment of time to, well, you got your business down, you know, you want to bring them back,
right.
but you don't want them to go down 3 more times just because you're going to reboot
Right.
the server. So.
Actually, I think probably a better statement would be it's a resistance to gather more information for a root cause determination rather than the immediate service restoration.
Okay. So would you agree, Dwayne? Is that what you're trying to say? So it's not to do the actual root cause analysis, but it's a resistance to gather
Additional data,
the
additional information to help with root cause analysis.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That's
Great.
I'd agree with Tina again.
Perfect. All right, I just want to capture, there's been a couple of comments here. Sorry, Thomas, just so I make sure I got them. Derek was asking if we could address IT resources and all the way through to, you know, how do you get somebody full-time on this? And I think we've kind of talked about, well, we didn't really talk about that. I'll put that point down. So essentially it's funding for the process and roles. So we'll get you folks to talk about how you attack that. Let me know, Derek, if you think that captures what you were asking. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, getting full-time resources. Actually, from Gene. And another question from Kathy: can you suggest high-level sponsorship and ensure everyone completes IDLE training? So it's like maybe capture that as executive sponsorship. Sponsorship. I don't spell well, but hopefully Word will tell me when I know. And training budgets / time. Sorry, Thomas, I cut you off. Did you have another thought?
No, it's just more around just in that one about resistance to gathering data information. One of the things that we found is just, and relates to that training, by having that training, you get everybody on the same page so that, you know, if they have the opportunity to get some information for root cause analysis and it doesn't impact negatively the time to restore service, that's what the training helps. And if we have a common set of training, and even outside of ITIL, the things like Kepner-Trigo or some other standardized form of problem analysis, if everybody is able to take that, or a core set of people are able to take that, then that helps with that type of information gathering. So.
Okay. Yeah, if you can hold those thoughts, Thomas, till we get to the solution side too, that would be good. I'm going to probably not capture that right now, but yeah, excellent. Okay.
And John,
I did have a comment from Tony too. Tony, I see it, but I'm going to wait also till we get to the solutions because it's him sharing some information about the things that they've done. So, sorry, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to the list. You know, it's going into things that I've seen as well. But one of the areas which actually I've found, especially in companies starting out, where I get a lot of questions and requests and work done, is the whole concept of scope. It's all tied together. Scope of the process linked to justification and financial support of the process. And as you're typing that, I'll just kind of elaborate a bit. So, you know, actually I had a fellow in last week, and we were just talking about how he's trying to get a formal problem management process and the tools and the time established at a smaller size, mid-sized company. And, you know, we had debates about, do you have a separate problem-solving team, or are you trying to assign work throughout the organization? And, you know, you're fighting for a budget which is limited in today's environment. So how do you go back and try and say, this has value? You know, intuitively we know that it's important to, you know, to get rid of any bugs that are out there in the infrastructure. But when you're selling it to higher level managers who say, what's the bottom line? How does it improve our revenues in some way, cut our cost structure in some way? The scope statement becomes really big. You know, what are we going to make problem management do at the beginning, and how are we going to evolve it?
Great. Okay. Any other comments on things you can remember that were particularly painful or challenging in terms of getting the problem process up and running? There's one of those pregnant pauses.
In some respect, kind of defining what is root cause, actually.
Okay.
People, like, what level at which you're going to do root cause, because technically you can say just about everything would be a human error. You know, if it's application code, still somebody had to create it. It's a human error, right? So.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so if I got that properly, it's when you're into root cause analysis, how do you come up with something that's meaningful rather than just buckets in, hey, it's human error because someone coded this originally.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a political sort of collegial overtone to that in terms of people not wanting to assign or be shown as assigning blame?
Yeah, there is that definitely, and it's something we do experience. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
This is Dwayne. At the very beginning of our problem management process, we were real sensitive to that, to get that, to plan that buy-in. So it was not anybody's fault. It was, here's the solution. So that my point is, yes, that is something that you have to be aware of, is
right.
participation without fear of being named out, I guess.
Right. That's not easy to say and maybe not easy to do. All right. Let's see. We've got a number of things here. Let's see any other. Oh. Here's a question. Any challenges with the integration of problem management across IT departments, i.e. architecture, infrastructure, app development? So I'll put that down here and we can talk about it. So the integration across, and I think you're saying really more across the functional IT areas. If I'm catching this properly. So just ping me, Gene, if I missed that, if that doesn't capture what you want. We'll get our panelists to talk about their experiences and how they address that. Anybody on the panel or anybody out there in Cyberland who has any other sort of thoughts or comments of key challenges they'd like to discuss? We are just about at the halfway mark, which is perfect. When we'll switch over.
It's Tina Mastriani.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. I just want to add one more. When you are at the part of implementing your process, you're so integrated with the process part of it that once you have your process part of it, then you have your tool. So I remember at the beginning of our process, it was very difficult because once you start getting data into your tool, you're going to be required to pull out reports. And at the initial stages of implementing problem management, it was trying to decide what data is important and should be required, like in the tool that will help us with our problem management process and will be able to give us some data information to help us move forward.
Perfect.
Yeah, like what field, difficult to decide what data is required to be tracked in the tool. Well, actually, it was, yes, as in like what field should we make required fields, right? So that, the whoever it is that are filling out the records, they have to put the information there so that when we do reporting from our problem process to show this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing, that it's a required field and there will be information in there. Right. For example, at the beginning of our process, our root cause category was not a required field. So about a few months in, we were kind of looking at our records going, a few of these root causes are not in there, and this record is closed. So wait a minute here, we're missing something, right? So we went back as part of continuous improvement as you go along. We said, okay, like on a small scale, we need a required field for root cause, right? So these are the learning pains and the learning curve that you're going to go through implementing a new process.
Right. Okay. Very good. All right, last call. Anybody, any other challenges you'd like to see discussed in the next 30 minutes? All right, great. I will throw the floor open a little bit to our panelists, and if we can now kind of take a reset, grab a sip of your tea or your coffee, and then think easiest way is probably just to go down this list, but feel free to ask me to jump around if you've got something off the top of your head. So access to subject matter experts, time away from their jobs, you had to prove the value. I think Dwayne, you talked about that initially. So collectively, what is our wisdom about how to attack and solve that problem?
Yeah, so this is Dwayne. I brought this one up originally. The way to maintain their attention, I guess, is to not overutilize them or call them for everything. Not just do a shotgun approach and call 15 people into a meeting because it might be them. So to utilize them very specifically when they are required and to not abuse them. And they can be abused in either by quantity of situations or problems that need to be analyzed, excuse me, or a lot of people will come to us because we've become successful, and we limit problem management to just our production environment, not our quality or integration or test. And people come to us in those non-production environments because they know that we can get the attention of cross-functional teams, and we purposely decline offering them assistance because we respect the time of the resources that we do utilize. So I think my resources, my virtual teammates, understand that, you know, the sky is not falling all the time, and when we do need them, it is important.
Okay,
so
great.
That took a long time to establish that and have them trust that we're not going to call them for everything.
Okay. Yeah, and I think Tony made a comment that those are good. I think it goes with this bullet point. I wonder if I can cut and paste. Try the magic of technology here. Sorry, just let me, that's kind of hard to read, but what Tony's comment was, we stress the advantage of fixing repeating issues so we don't have to distract level 2 from important project work and other planned work, incident responses. It may apply to one of these other points actually, but good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Thomas.
At the bank originally, and we have strayed, unfortunately, a little bit away from this, but we're reinstated it. The problem people were really how they were looked at in terms of even their role were more, you know, kind of their prospective managers, right? And so one of the levels where they could, for advancement, would be you became a problem manager, and the key is they would be able to they had, you know, technical knowledge, and they would be able to tell, you know, what this work with the SMEs to get solutions. And the other thing.
So sorry, how would could you just rephrase that so I can capture it?
It was sort of they were the people that were in the role for problem were basically high-level SMEs themselves, right? Okay. They weren't just anybody, right? Okay. The people that you chose were quite knowledgeable and able to get things done, and it was a job that was kind of like considered a one step up to one step below a manager type role.
Okay.
So that was one thing, and the other thing is from top down, the management team needs to stress to all the other SMEs that they need to provide this information in a timely manner to the problem team, right? So you need their buy-in and their support in that.
Okay. Great.
Because it can take time away from their jobs, absolutely.
Sure.
But definitely it's something where, you know, they need to balance that time out, right? To make sure this doesn't repeat, right?
Great. Okay. I'm going to skip back one thing because I got a comment that had come in after I wrapped up, and let me just see if I can the magic of cut and paste again here, so I don't lose this comment. Was a challenge. Which was, oops, sorry, hold on one second. What is that? There we are. Nope. Did that already. Anyway, the reluctance oops, of people to document findings. And solutions. So I think it's the point probably is taking the time. So people do the analysis, but then don't necessarily want to take the time to document that for posterity so that it may come up again, but the documentation is lost. Thanks for that. Sorry for that distraction. Let's get back. Any other thoughts about access to SMEs and ways to address that? I think we've got some pretty good ideas there.
Yeah. Actually, John, I'll just throw out a quick thing as well from some groups I've talked to. It goes back to scope and different ways to approach the whole problem process implementation. And one of the groups I've been working with in the past, they had an approach where they created a tool system that was shared throughout the IT organization. So, you need the tool, but it allowed each individual team and group to create their own problem records. And you've got an organizational view of it because they're all in a common tool. That was a great way to do two things. You could educate people on the purpose of what they did. They did a combination of promoting and putting into job descriptions the need for quality assurance and being basically accountable for keeping all of your components in whatever your areas are up to good running condition. So then they back that up saying, we can't identify every issue out there. So quite often, teams know what's going on. Once they kind of, it's tied into the concept of understanding and buying into problem management itself, but they did it based on understanding QA. So now you have people who understand problem management and the need for it. That is QA. We're getting rid of bugs that are, interrupting operations and down the road is costing us money. So it allows people to, create their own records and just document when they're doing their own QA activity. So it gave a lot of good low-level buy-in, and there was a bit of top-level push as well because across the organization they were pushing the QA concept. So I think that could add a bit more, which can add to this idea about how do you get people to devote time. If it's part of a team manager's accountabilities, how they're measured at the end of the year, they don't mind taking on a few of these jobs and documenting it to show that they've done the work.
Okay, very good. All right, let's skip on down to the next challenge here. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
If I get just one last thing, whatever. I agree completely with what was just said. Actually, one of our strategies now is we're actually talking to the SMEs and the incident people, really, which are the SMEs, and the way we talk to them is that basically this is empowering, enabling them, because they'll always complain, oh, we'll have this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. I said, if you do, this is how the data we need. You need to do it this way, and this enables you to, if you want that solved, you want the executive, whoever, to see that this problem is a big issue, and it's because it's repeating for you. This is how you do it, right? Through problem management. Because we have the avenues to talk to the management teams in terms of high level, what are the issues. So try to empower them, right? And a lot of people work well when you empower them to help out, right?
Great, yeah. So it's some job satisfaction in there, I think. They can see that they're impacting and making positive change.
Yeah, and we add that into our training, which is, I think, part of the other thing to get more buy-in to.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Because if they understand why they're putting this information in, they'll put better information in, and we'll get better data to be able to trend or do what we need to do to resolve the issue.
Right. So is that a fair way to say that? So you build into the training some what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. All right, so getting full buy-in into the process, it's easier to do it myself and faster. Probably the point you just made, Thomas, ties into that. Any other thoughts about that? How did you?
Yeah, no, that's the main thing that I wanted to say about that. Yeah, and a lot of time is really just saying, listen, you know what, you could do it faster yourself, but right now we position problem management to be kind of the group that will talk to issues, right?
Right.
They're the group that kind of will go over and talk about these things. So in order for them to get that, they could do it themselves, absolutely, but then no one would ever see that they're doing this stuff, right? And they may not get any resources to do it. So problem management is your way to get that type of resourcing, right?
So with problem management, you can champion solutions.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm kind of listening and trying to, yeah. Great.
That's our goal, right? Whether we get there 100% is another question.
True.
It's Tina Mastriani from Bank of Montreal. Also, to getting a full buy-in to the process, I think you have to prove to the people that you're trying to get buy-in from them. You have to prove this is a proven process that will improve, like it will reduce outages, it will reduce outage minutes, it will reduce errors in the infrastructure. Like I think at the beginning of your process, you have to prove, we're at the beginning, and I know, we don't believe this is going to work, but this is where they have implemented it, and it has worked, and these are all the positives and the how it will help our organization move forward. Because I think in an organization, outage minutes is a biggie. Like how often is our customer not able to do what we promised that they can do it? So we have to prove to the forum and whoever it is that you're trying to get buy-in from that this is a proven process that works.
Great. Okay. Any other thoughts on getting the buy-in? We can move on to any of these other points if anyone wants to address. I think, Tina, you were talking about the challenge of separating incident from problem because historically, I think before the framework was documented, they were.
I'm just thinking back to when it was first implemented, and I remember myself because I guess I was one of the people that I would host a daily meeting of reviewing all the way we call it now, reviewing all the incidents, but at the time they were problems. So everything was all thrown into one communication, an incident, a problem, what did we do to fix the issue, right? So now you're trying to change the culture to say, rather than it being this one thing, it's now an incident that goes to a problem, that goes to a known error, that we raise a change, and that fixes a known error. So it's a culture change. It's education. It's it's properly communicating to an organization that this is coming down the pipes. On behalf of Bank of Montreal's part, I remember we set up like posters and communication posters all over, like wherever we could, so that people knew, hey, this is coming down. Like we're going to be implementing our ITIL processes, and it's going to be incident management, problem management. So I think the communication is very, very important for an organization to buy in, to accept an ITIL process being implemented, and for the people that are actually restoring service and looking at the causes and fixing it, it was a struggle was the culture change as in separating each of these processes, because prior it was all, we were doing all the stuff, but it wasn't actually separated.
Right. So in a nutshell, what would you say, what one of the 1 or 2 points that you used to address that?
Well, you have to have proper communication to an organization. My computer just went blank. Anyway, there we go. Proper communication to an organization in order for them to get the buy-in, like give as much information as possible so the organization does read and does understand what is coming. Like it's not a mystery as to what's going on.
So can I say sell it up front?
Yes.
Okay.
Proper communication, proper dialogue in regards to the implementation of the processes.
Yeah, just to add to what Tina said, as part of our program, there was a very large amount of money for marketing, right? Posters, everything, when they're putting out the processes to really get it in the eyes of people so they understand it, and a lot of presentations, it was important to go top down. You had to. We also did courses for the managers, right, so that they understood it, so that they could, talk to the people about it. So a lot of information on that in terms of communication. So Tina's absolutely right. Communication was a very key to getting all this in there, and making sure everyone's communicating at the same level.
Awesome. Good points. Anybody want to add to that? All right. Let's move on. Conflict of interest, the problem versus incident outage thing. So I think we were talking here about, hey, everybody's running around with their hair on fire, and it's more fun to firefight than it is to step back, think about it from a process perspective, what information we want to gather. So how do you address that?
This is Dwayne. This is something I brought up, I guess, and it's actually kind of, in my mind, it's a subsection of the prior one also, where there's education that has to happen. And we put the posters up, and we did, at Blue Cross here, we have what's called a tech over easy, which is just basically a brown bag lunch. You know, here's the topic, and put posters up, and then here's what's in it for you, and just educate, you know, that it has value, that not to take it lightly. I guess as much as the word communication was used in the prior segment, the word education is as important.
Yeah, and in this case, we're talking about the education of the value of following the process,
Right.
Even under stress, essentially, right? Would that be a fair summary of what you just said?
Exactly.
Okay. Tina, Thomas, Graham, any other thoughts about that?
No, I think that's about. I guess the only other thing I would add is, and I think I mentioned it before, that if you were able to get some of the key people on a common methodology for doing root cause analysis, like Kepner-Trigo or something like that, that also helped. So it's a basic common methodology, you know, whether you chose, you know, Ishikawa diagrams, whatever, right? Just so everybody kind of, at least the core set understands, you know, what's needed, right? So, and
this is Dwayne again, and I want to endorse that statement. When we first were starting to learn how to do this, and we took the training classes, and we learned Ishikawa, and we learned the 5 whys, and we learned Kepner-Trigo, and you know, we learned all the 5 different ways to do I got a book right here that's the Apollo root cause analysis method. We tried to apply them all, and so every time we had a meeting, the format and the structure of the meeting was different because somebody was better at one than the other. And we've adopted Kepner-Trigo, and all the meetings are Kepner-Trigo now. So that has helped us.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So you're not fighting over what methodology are we going to use. You're focused on one.
It's a perception that, you know, you'd get a SME in there, and it's like, well, this isn't the way that, you know, it would seem more ad hoc like, you know, it's like, why are we doing it this way where we did it this way, a different way before?
Right.
So now we've adopted the same process, and it's consistent for every meeting, from meeting to meeting to meeting.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is you also did training on that process, right?
Yeah, certification.
Wow. Okay.
I think a big underlying thing about this whole thing is, you know, a lot of the resistance stuff you get is people keep saying, oh, we're already doing it. Why should we do it your way, right? And and the biggest benefit of ITIL is really just everyone can talk the same way. When I say incident, you know what I mean by incident. You know, everyone here on the call knows what incident means. They're not thinking, oh, you know, I need to discover a root cause when I'm doing my incident resolution. And we're not thinking in that way, right? That's the big thing, and that's what things like Kepner-Trigo and Ishikawa, it gets everybody talking in the same language so that I'm not spending 5 minutes trying to understand what you're just trying to say, right? And why, right? So.
Yeah. And I'll just make a comment while you're writing, John, around this too. It's Graham here from Wyze. It's also, I found, with different companies, to understand that, you know, problems and incidents, you can be the same person, and you need to understand the concept of not confusing or knowing when to split hairs of incident and problem. So best to give an example of what one of the clients had. They had an issue with a printer, and the technicians went out at, I guess, level 2. They were trying to fix it and try and figure out why wouldn't it start up. You know, they did the normal reboot, didn't work, and nothing was obvious. And during that time, they really is part of an educational thing of understanding incident management. Your focus is get users back to work, and then get everything fully restored if you have to as a secondary act. So they actually kept users waiting for a full day trying to figure out what's wrong with the printer, which is essentially a problem management activity. And they got confused that they forgot incident management. They could have just remapped people to a different printer. So in this whole thing about incidents and problems and splitting, the definitions, it's important to know that everyone can do both, right? So at that company, they went through an awareness campaign just of what an incident and problem is and what incident management needs to accomplish, so that it didn't happen again. So that you first of all try and get users back to work. The incident analyst may still have time on the clock to go back and then start trying to investigate, in which if you have a problem process, it can follow the techniques to try and become good at it. And if they really find it's an issue that they think needs, maybe they get it up and running but they don't understand why, then you need the next mechanism in place. So it's a process mechanism about now how do I take that and try and have problem management take over the longer term activity to figure out, I know I got it up and running but I don't know why. Someone should look at it because it has an importance and someone needs to figure out where it sits in the whole scheme of the company.
Great.
I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's important to split those two.
Yeah, I think so. We have about 8 or 9 minutes left, so I'm going to push on and make sure we talk about some of these things fairly quickly. Actually, Tony early on had put a comment in about funding and roles, so I'm going to just paste that in here and make that bigger so we can read it. But basically, what he said is they quantify the cost to the business of problems and essentially demonstrated that they're quite costly and there are hard costs associated with those. As well as customer satisfaction costs. So that's kind of the first solution, I think, to the funding for the process and the roles. Anybody else on the panel have other thoughts about that?
Define your scope, right? So you don't have to boil the ocean, right? Maybe, you start off saying, okay, we're going to start with a core problem team, and just like you have a major incident response team, like it was Dwayne had, right, which deals with like critical issues. You can start off with that. There you can actually see the ROI very easily, right, just by mapping the reduction in outages for these key services, right? And that also goes to Tina's point about proving your worth, right, and problem management's worth. Right? Now, we didn't follow that particular route, but we did define a scope so that we could, and we did a little bit backwards, and now there's a lot of focus on these type of things, and this is where we're actually getting the executive buy-in and everything to say, oh, okay, yeah, we need this, because, at a minimum, they want at least for us to report on how well we're doing and how well we're pushing to get root cause and to get fix, of course.
Cool. All right, I'm going to skip back a little bit just for a second. We did have a question from Madeline on the topic of education. Can suggest to educate by example, that way it's understood what it means. How to apply, I'm not sure if this is a question or actually a comment, so we'll keep going and I'll see if I can decipher what that means as we go through, sorry.
You can have champions, you can have ITIL champions, right? People that really know things, that type of thing. I think that's what it's in.
Yeah, okay, I get you. Yep, probably is. If we missed that, Madeline, then feel free to type in another comment there. Executive sponsorship, training budgets, time, those were challenges. I think we probably touched on that already, haven't we? Is there anything else anybody wanted to say there? Maybe that was a comment from Madeline, actually, that fits there.
Yeah, I think it's key to get executive sponsorship, and I'd say, I've seen a lot of different companies with, similar financial institutions. Until they got that, it really didn't go very well, right? So they really need to be, backing this up, right?
Right. So I think we talked about different sort of ways to get executive sponsorship, essentially through communication, education, marketing, and also by demonstrating improving ROI. I think,
yeah.
That's probably been covered. Anyone has any other thoughts, let me know. Okay, defining the scope of the process and linking to financial justification. I think we actually just talked about that. Did we not? That's probably, I can take your comment, Thomas, here and put it down there. How's that look? I think we're moving there around, covering those things.
One of the key things also, sorry if I might add, one of the things is,
sure,
is putting measures, right? Show how we improve KPIs, stuff like that. Very important to define those things so that you make them about, return on investment, things like that, right?
Right. Okay, so you have defined scope as well as defined metrics.
Yeah.
So they're tracked and reported on? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And it could be as simple as, your KPI is reducing, and it may not be a problem KPI, right? It may be, for example, reducing outage minutes. We have the first set of KPIs we had is about reducing outage minutes, but you can't reduce those outage minutes without determining the permanent solution, the root cause.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yep.
So,
okay. Now, I think, Thomas, this was your comment. The challenge was around defining root cause and what level do we take that to?
yeah, it's just that there's a million interpretations of what root cause is, and I think as a process owner and a process governance team, you have to draw a line somewhere, and it's really what the organization, at least I'll be blunt, it's what the executives sort of feel is how they define that root cause, and your job is to kind of make sure that they're not counting apples and oranges at the same time, right? Because they might go, oh, one's a hardware issue, but a hard drive being full, we'll call it a capacity issue. Those are two different types of things. They are all valid, but it's just a different way of looking at things. And also, as I mentioned, you could look at everything as a human action issue, or everything as a problem from change, because or a lot of things as a problem from change,
right,
that you didn't do a formal change for, right?
Okay. So there's some time required, if I get it, to sort of sit down and say, hey, well, how are we going to classify things, and we agree on the classifications and what goes into what bucket.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that and yeah, go ahead, Tina.
It's Tina Mastroianni. Also, at the beginning of our problem management implementation, our root causes were very simple. They were application software, hardware, and as our process progressed, now we have like software code, software, like 3 different types for software. So I think at the beginning of a process, everything is very simple, but as your process matures, there seems to be a requirement to sort of drill down more in granular in our root cause categories. I found with our organization anyway.
And would you say granular? Is that also related to your ability to do that? So I'm hearing you say you might not suggest doing that sooner.
Again, I believe from our root causes, I think it was altered through continuous improvement. At the beginning of our process, software and application and the simple root causes were acceptable at the time. But then as we started pulling data, as we started looking at the data, we thought, you know what, software by itself is not good enough anymore. So again, it's continuous improvement of the process. At the beginning of our process, the simple root causes were acceptable, but we found as our process matured, we needed more granular definition of our root causes. Like, we had to add to the software code or software configuration, and so now it's more granular. Our subject matter experts were capable of defining the root cause to the granular level. It was the scope of problem management at the beginning that was, the root causes were simple, but now our scope has expanded to be more granular for our root causes.
Got it. Okay. Very
Make
good.
sense?
Yep. I think, did I capture that? Okay.
Start with the simple root causes. Yep. This improvement comes from, it's basically continuous improvement as your process matures. But at the beginning, it's important to keep things simple, because you're fighting for resources, you're fighting for communication to get out there, you're fighting for education, you're fighting for buy-in. So I think at the beginning, if you keep everything simple, it'll be easier to explain, easier to report on, easier to talk about, right? And then as your process matures, then it can be more a more technical discussion. It could be a more expanded discussion.
Right. Very good. Well, we are rapidly running out of time. We have a few more points to discuss. What I'd like to do is before we do that, is just kind of wrap things up so that anybody who has as the current business lingo goes, a hard stop, can feel free to exit without feeling too guilty about any of those things. And we'll talk about sort of what the next steps might be here. Let me just show you one more slide here. Oh, yeah. That. So the next steps in terms of the virtual interest group, we'll send out an email to everybody. This session has been recorded, and we'll send out the document that I've been creating as well. If you want to pop into the Thought Rock library, you'll see the VIG notes in there. If you're not a member, you can get a hold of us and find out how to join. We'll carry on some of this communication in the ThoughtRock.net forum. We also have a LinkedIn group and a Twitter group, so if you're interested in doing that. I'd also encourage you, you could email info@ThoughtRock.net if you would like to see this VIG continued, you know, in another 30, 60, 90 days kind of time frame. Let us know when you think it would be useful to get back together. The concept there is that we could continue the discussions, not necessarily even just at sort of this high level, but define a process whereby we might talk about particular subject matter and where feasible or practical, we share specific things. Some of the things, for example, that came up today were things about education, things about different root cause analysis techniques, things about marketing. You might share some examples of documents or programs that were run, or executive education programs, those kinds of things. So we can definitely do that and see if there's an interest in continuing this virtual interest group. So let's see. That kind of wraps up formally this program. I don't know if the panelists so far, I think everybody's still here. So if we want to keep going, we can do that unless Jamie tells me that's an absolute no-no. But I think we're having so much fun, we might as well carry on for a few minutes and see if we can get through these sort of next 4 or 5 bullet points.
I'm sorry, this is Dwayne. I do have a 1 o'clock meeting here, so thank you for letting me participate, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thanks, thanks, Dwayne. It's great to have your input. Bye. All right, Thomas, Tina, Graham, anybody else have to go?
No, I'm good, John.
No, I'm good for a little while.
Okay, great. Let's see if we can pop through a couple other of these things. The concept of avoiding the blame game, and I think that is a sort of a follow to potentially of root cause analysis. How have you seen that handled?
Not very well. A bit of a bounce back. There was an initiative, maybe just as an example, a few years ago, and I thought they have done it the right way. Is what they said is, okay, this is about reducing, improving service by reducing outage minutes. So they basically formed teams of development and production groups, and basically they had regular weekly meetings to discuss these outages. And their job was, it doesn't matter whether it's your group that's doing it, the people in the meeting, or not. They need to make sure, no matter where, that this particular issue to the line of business. They were assigned basically a line of business to say, you are the responsible for this line of business. Whether your group personally that reports to you does the work or not doesn't matter. So that kind of eliminated that blame game, because we're all working together. I had to fix this for my group. I needed another group's help. This is how we're doing it. And they need my help to fix other things, right? So basically service focused and mix it up between development and production, so there's no blame game there.
Okay.
That's how I found where it actually has worked, I found. So
Great. Okay. I actually had another question coming out from someone, which was, has anyone used Six Sigma practitioners to aid in problem resolution and root cause analysis?
we were looking into that. Yeah, we were looking into that. But
yeah, there's some overlap in those disciplines.
We did it for incidents. Yes. To see if there was anything that was reducing, in terms of the handoffs and things. So.
Right. Great. All right. Any comments on the integration across the functional IT areas? Actually, I think you just talked a little bit about that, Thomas, in terms of building teams that were cross-functional.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I guess the other thing is just, as an organization, to make a decision whether you want the centralized problem team or a distributed problem team, right? So I guess I think there was also a comment about small organizations. I think in a small organization, a centralized team is probably doable, but as you get to a large organization, I don't think you can help but have a distributed problem management team because it's just so huge, and you want subject matter experts in that area, so they might as well stay in that area, right?
Right.
So that's my
Okay.
2 cents worth of what I've seen, but
Yeah.
other people can
Yeah.
pipe in if they have seen otherwise.
I'll just throw in a quick comment on that. It's Graham again from Wyze. Is some of the activities I've seen split up. All of the metrics, the key trending stuff off of your incident tickets, I've seen that handled by a central group. Typically, in my experience, it was given to a service desk group as one of their activities. But they were acting as a central sort of problem investigation group, trying to find the things that are the biggest negative trends. And then it made use of distributed groups to handle the issues that were brought up on top of other problem issues in general.
All right. So you have a central group that leverages distributed groups. Okay. I actually had a question coming from Kathy, and I see she still is. Can anyone sort of address the, we've talked a fair bit about problem, and we've been generally talking about it from a reactive mode. What do you do, and is there actually time and resources to deal with or address problems from a proactive mode? So looking at the known error database or the problem database and attacking things proactively going forward. Have you seen that happen, and how does that happen?
So at the bank, we've seen it actually in two different ways. One is our capacity team, the strategic process like availability. They kind of have that function, and they, especially capacity, they have a lot of proactive records, and we've actually divided off our problem priority matrix to account for that as well. So that's one method. The other method we found that was interesting is that when we were checking out outage minutes, root cause, there are a couple of reasons for root cause. If you look at it in terms of the outage, you're trying to reduce the outage, which is all the service really cares about, right? One is the root cause, which either it happened and it caused this whole thing, but what elongated that outage, if anything, right? It could have been that we didn't have monitoring on that server, so therefore we didn't notice it. So a problem occurred, so that's the root cause, right? That problem, but we didn't notice it for 6 hours, right? So you have to say part of that outage is due to, that 6 hours if we had noticed it sooner, right? So in terms of service, we found that, they can make a proactive period to say, oh, we need to do some monitoring on that, right?
Right.
Or we need to review our monitoring function. So that's sort of one wrinkle that we found that was kind of interesting. So even though the root cause is to replace the hard drive is a hardware issue, putting monitoring would actually, from a service standpoint, improve things.
Right. Okay. So that's a good example. Yeah. All right. We got a couple more here, and then we probably should wrap up. I think, Tina, you talked about this. It's difficult to decide what data needs to be tracked, what should be required fields inside the tool, and so on. How did you address that issue?
I guess we just learned along the way. I mean, at the beginning, again, when we did implement the process initially, we had our tool along with it, and we designed key performance indicators, and we designed items. But then we found, going back to the tool, thinking, well, what information do we really need to pull out? Like, what data do we need to pull out of the tool now that we have all this good information about problem management? And we found we were constantly going back and forth, like this field is required and this field is required. So for myself, like in our process, it was just continuous improvement as you went along the way. Like, continuous improvement never ends, even to this day. Like, we're very mature in our process, but there's always areas for improvements. There are always gaps. And I find that, like, anywhere, like with the process, with the tool, with reporting, with data requirements for reporting, there's always continuous improvement needed. Right.
Cool. Very good. This was actually from one of the panelists or participants who wasn't on the panel. The whole concept of, people are reluctant to document their findings and solutions, so they might get involved in, the incident and then potentially the problem process. But from there, how do you get them to take time out of their busy day and actually sit down and do the things that none of us like to do, that is document the solutions? Any ideas on how that was addressed?
Actually, this is probably very common. Even today at BMO, our support people or our subject matter experts are constantly fighting fires. They're concentrating on restoring service for our customers. So going back and documenting everything is always a challenge. But again, I believe proper communication to the teams to say, you know what, if this is all documented, the next time this happens, it's going to take us less to restore service. We're going to know what's going on. Or if we properly document our findings, we're going to eliminate this and it won't happen again, so we will not have to fight the fires. Again, proper communication on the success of documenting our findings.
Right. Yeah, so communication on successes and some why and what's in it for me. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Well, what's in it for the organization too? If we document our findings, we're not going to experience this outage again. We're not going to have these problems. We won't have to spin our cycles to restore service again.
Okay, great.
And again, the importance is the communication. Right? At the initial implementation of any process, communication is very important to let the people understand what are the benefits and what are we all going to get out of this.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah,
all right.
Just add to that, John, just add the word templates.
Okay.
I found before, the more you can template things for people, it really speeds things along and gets adoption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Document expectations consistently for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm amazed I can spell consistently.
Yes,
usually that good. The advantage of typing in a word processor too, it lets me know when I'm making mistakes. All right, we are a little over 10 minutes over time. We try not to do that, but this was frankly quite a good discussion and lots of interaction, which is great to see. I think it's about time that we wrap up. We are looking at offering a problem management workshop through ThoughtRock, so we'd be interested in your feedback on that, whether you'd want to participate or help lead it or whatever, and just see if there's sort of a demand out there for those kind of things. So we'll follow up with some details probably February on those kind of things. Otherwise, as I said before, if you are not a ThoughtRock member and want to join, please do that. You can email info@thoughtrock.net if you have suggestions about the frequency you'd like to see this virtual interest group meet and topics that you'd like to drill down on. Anybody who wants to volunteer to be on the panel and discuss, or even do a short presentation and share some of their experiences, maybe a brief overview of how and why they picked a particular root cause analysis methodology, things like that. Those are the kind of value adds that we want to drive to ThoughtRock members. So we'd be more than happy to help facilitate and coordinate that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thomas, Tina, Graham, thanks for participating. I got some good comments and feedbacks from people who were participating. And
yeah, now we can go pick up a real coffee instead of sipping on this virtual coffee.
That's virtual coffee, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, me and I'm virtually buying. So.
Oh, great.
Go ahead and have a latte on me.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget, it'll be recorded and available on ThoughtRock. So.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.